I got off the boat last Friday after almost 2 months. I hated to leave, and yet I couldn't wait to leave to get back to actual where I am now, my office in New York and work life.
Yeah, after a couple of days of vacation, we have that kind of hunger to get back to the office. It's a dysfunctional disorder of overachievers.
I work every day, wherever I am, but actual, and which is why I think so much about work from home is junk, which is being in this office, even if I don't see anybody, is a discipline that makes the work better.
Absolutely. I agree. Barry, let's get started with our podcast. Barry Diller is one of the most influential media entrepreneurs of our time. He's a master of reinvention. You have reinvented Hollywood filmmaking at ABC and Paramount Pictures. You have reinvented television, creating the Fox Broadcasting Company. You have reinvented the internet economy, building IAC into a global conglomerate of stellar companies. Along the way, you have also become known for philanthropy projects like the High Line and Little Island in New York. Most recently, you have published your memoirs, Who Knew? A book that is so exciting and thrilling, it could be a Hollywood blockbuster itself. Barry, in your book, you're describing a scene, I think it's April 26th in 1977, the opening night of Studio 54, birthday party for Bianca Jagger, and I think you are arriving with a group of friends, including Diane, at the entrance of the club. Everybody gets in, and you are pushed back by the bouncer. You don't get in. What happened, and how did it feel?
Well, it was like we'd gone someplace first, and it was like 4 or 5 people in my car. I think all of them were kind of face famous, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people in front of this opening. It was like a madhouse. And I get up, and some big bouncer type says, "No, you can't enter." So I'm a little perplexed. I go back in my car and I think, well, okay, somebody's going to come rescue me. I mean, they can't just forget about me. And I'm sitting in my car for 5-10 minutes and thinking, this is unfair. And I was just about to leave, and then the guy who owned the club runs out, knocks on my window, and coaxes me, very hurt, back into the premises of the first actual night of Studio 54, which was, I quickly forgot it because it was so exciting.
But I mean, Barry, you were basically the most successful and the hottest Hollywood mogul, CEO of Paramount,
It didn't
and
matter.
nevertheless rejected. I remember in the book of Nile Rodgers, the founder of Cheek, there was a scene a bit parallel. He described how he wanted to enter Studio 54 together with his bass guitarist, Brandon Edwards, and they were also rejected. And then they went back to their studio and were improvising on a new tune. And that's the night when the famous song Le Freak was created, because they were always singing "fuck off," da 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 da, "fuck off," da 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 da. Then they decided, okay, "fuck off" goes too far. Let's say "freak out," and that's how the song was created.
Fuck
It's
off would
about
be better.
rejection.
By the way, if rejection, as we know, rejection's good. It's good for the spur.
I have the feeling, and that's why I'm mentioning that, Barry, that rejection is almost a motivator for you
It's fuel.
to go further.
It's fuel.
Mm-hmm. So where does it come from? Has it anything to do with your childhood? I mean, your childhood was not particularly simple. You came up in a relatively wealthy family, but in your book, reading about it, it doesn't sound like a very happy childhood.
Well, it was, like I think I can't speak for most or whatever, just mine was, partly I was cocooned and I enjoyed things a lot, but partly because my family was so dysfunctional, and because my own confusions as I was getting to be an adolescent, uh, I, uh, I had all sorts of really darts thrown at me, I thought, from this environment that I had to adapt to. And I was very lucky that my biology was strong enough. And I think partly that is the difference, whether if you're biologically strong and you have the good luck of uh, not succumbing to difficulties, you use these things that were problematic to me in my childhood were tools that I used later to succeed that others didn't have.
But did you feel as a child rejected, neglected? I mean, it doesn't
No,
sound
I
that
was
you felt.
totally, I mean, I always thought that I was raised in a very plush forest,
Wow.
uh, that I was, my parents were just so disengaged with me. And so I, I don't know that I felt rejected, but I did not feel that there was a single actual human person in the earliest period that paid any attention to me.
So unconditional love is not something that you experienced in your childhood. You had to perform in order to get appreciation.
Yeah, I don't know if I, this concept of unconditional love, which I have in my family now, and I see with our elder children who now have children, and I see the differences that that kind of demonstrated unconditional love can provide for your evolution, for your maturing. Oh my God, what a wondrous thing it is.
I mean, it's interesting. Again, this Nile Rodgers memoir, he had a childhood being raised by two drug addicts, heroin addicts. He didn't play with teddy bears. He played with the needles of the heroin. And nevertheless, he described it as a childhood of unconditional love, and that gave him strength. So, if you didn't experience that, where do you think your incredible strength comes from?
As I said, I do think a lot of it is biological. I mean,
Yeah, but there's also mental strength. Sorry,
well,
but
well, but I'm always dismayed by, and it's very much people who in our country, Republicans or people on the very not on the far, but on the conservative side, think that these people, the people involved, have everything to do with their success, and that therefore no one else needs any help or anything else because it's just a matter of self-assertion and everybody can self-assert. And I and take pride in that. And I think, as again, I think it is biological, meaning whatever it was, and yes, did I have the ability to wade through and make my own path out, which I did, but was that an act of, as you say, you know, thinking or whatever, or was it just I'm sturdy? However I was constructed, am I sturdy?
Barry, I remember a dinner that we had a couple of years ago in Idaho, and you were speaking about the project to write a book. You said you are writing for approximately 10 years on your autobiography, but you also described how you are struggling with it, and particularly difficult it seemed to be for you to speak in that book, which was supposed to be very open and honest. And I can only say it is incredibly, movingly open and honest. But if it has to be that, then it also has to speak about your homosexuality. And you
Yes.
said that you are really struggling about that. You don't know if you should do it. And in the end, you decided to do it, to write the book and to speak about that. In a way, it is almost like a late coming out. You never were hiding anything, but nevertheless, to speak publicly that like that about it, you did it for the first time. Why? Why now?
I did it because I thought, when I decided to write this book, I thought, just in narrative terms, because all my life has been about telling stories, uh, I thought, it's a good story. Just, I know objectively, the arc of my life is a good story. And then the second thing I thought was, well, if I'm going to do it, I have to tell it true. I mean, it's not a teaching book. It's not something that a lot of people do who've been successful in business who want to pass on all the brilliant stuff they've done or give lessons to others. I just thought it was a good story. And I knew that, of course, I had to talk about my sexuality. It has a lot to do with so much of my life. I mean, there's a point at which you do make those decisions. And maybe when we were talking about this in Idaho, I was struggling with, well, all right. And it is always true about telling stories. How much do you tell? How much detail do you do? What is relevant and what is excitable or exhibitionist, which I didn't want to do. And so in the end, I just said the only North Star for me in doing this was, can I tell it honestly? And so that's what I tried to do. And I had to could I not talk about sexuality, which is, I mean, in anyone's life. Now, if it, and it's personal memories. I mean, it's not any other kind of book. So that's why I did it. And yeah, it wasn't like surprising to me that I was revealing things to myself, but it was that I'd never made declarations. I always shied away from declarations because I thought my declarations are too complex or whatever. They were really an excuse. I just wasn't brave enough to do it.
But
Sorry.
in the book, you're also describing in a very self-reflecting manner that you sometimes thought you should have perhaps spoken about it earlier.
Yeah.
Are there some regrets in that context?
I look, I definitely think, I wish this is now, the relevant period is, my God, it's the 80s. So it's a long time ago, where, and it was really because of AIDS and because of a lot of activism and a lot of progress that kind of galvanized itself through the 80s and out of AIDS. And I thought I could have been, quote, more helpful. I know the things that I did do, which I'm not ashamed of, actually, I'm proud of, but I thought I could have been more helpful, and that I know the reason I wasn't is because I was chicken. How's that?
That's again very honest, Barry. But I mean, the zeitgeist was different in the 60s and the 70s. I mean, it still could have ruined the career of a media executive if you had spoken about it publicly. Then that changed. And my question is, do you see a rollback in that context? Have we seen the peak with regard to openness? And could it go into the other direction again, or where are we?
No, I think that this progress is evolutionary. You can't. It's inconceivable to me that you will go back. Now we can posit all sorts of horribles given our current situation, and certainly politically in this country, that might roll back lots of things. There's a noise about maybe rolling back marriage, the Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage, but I don't think this progress is going to roll back. I think it is just, you can't imagine. You certainly can if you read the history of this, and it's not deep history. It's 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's fairly fresh. But the heinous crimes that were committed against people simply because of something that was not a choice is just remarkable. And I don't think that progress rolls itself back.
But you are challenging open-mindedness of the American society and beyond America also with the fact that you're not a case of he's gay and that's it. You are, for many, many years, in love and in a wonderful partnership. And as you disclose in the book, also in a physical partnership with Diane von Furstenberg. So,
oh yes, as I said,
it's even more complicated. Huh?
Part of one of the reasons of difficult declarations is that my life story is, it has, if you want to call black white, it has definitely gray in it because the relationship of my life is with a woman.
At the beginning of the book, you are speaking about your confused sexuality. Would you say today it's still in an inspiring way confused, or would you say you feel?
You mean, am I still confused?
Yeah, I mean, confusion can be inspiring. I mean,
Well, look, uh, again, this is like 40, 60 years ago, it's more than 67. I'm so old, God. But this is in the 60s, and I was in my teens, and I was confused. I mean, I knew what nature dictated for me, but I also was enormously confused and conflicted because I didn't even know, I went to part of my healthy biology is when I was, I think, 11 or 12, I went to the Beverly Hills Public Library to read about homosexuality. And at that time, whatever number of books there were that I was quickly rifling through, everything just said it's a mental disease and a mental condition, an aberration, uh, disease, disease, disease. I got on my bike and I rode home and I thought, I'm diseased? I don't feel like I'm diseased. Seemed kind of pure, actually, but diseased? I mean, that was enormously confusing to me.
is
As
there
I think
any?
it is, by the way, I think it is. I think those things are still true. Pre-adolescence, I think people of same-sex uh, uh, attraction uh, still go through that at early stages. I don't think it'll ever be an easy transition for a simple reason. It's in very much the minority. And because of that, uh, the the difficulties of that passage, there are always going to be difficulties of that passage.
Any lesson learned, any recommendation for people thinking about that, being confused, being gay, being straight, being fluid,
Well, I think,
how to handle it?
as I wish, and it's, you know, Europeans have much more fluidity than Americans do in this respect. Uh, and I think that is easing, but I, I don't, I don't have anything I would say to a young 10, 8, 7, 9, 12-year old, uh, other than hold on, it gets better.
There's one
But
passage in your
every good advice that has ever been given to me has been hold on, it gets better. And every decade or so, I register how true that is.
Barry, there's one passage in your book that I found particularly moving and fascinating. That's when you talk about taking risks. And I mean, it's obvious that you are one of the biggest risk takers in American media and business history. Uh, the question, where does your boldness come from? And you basically are debating it with yourself that it may also come from the fact that there was always something that, yeah, you thought is a disease, is something that is wrong with you, that you have to hide. And that is such a big risk that every other professional risk compared to that looked incredibly small. And that's why you took the risk.
I think it's true. I
That
see risk differently than other people. And I think that's generally true. Again, if you can get through the process, if you have one big fear, and you can manage that fear. I mean, an unmanageable fear is something entirely different. But if you have one big fear, other fears that normal people have don't have one big one. And I mean big. This is not like just garden variety.
existential almost. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have that, at least in my case and in many other cases, I think that I've observed, it gives you kind of free reign with everything else. You can take all sorts of risks because they don't relate to you the same way. I don't see risk the way other people see it, and the reason is not because I don't understand risk. It's because I had one big one, and that obliterated everything else. And in a way, listen, thank God for compensating situations. That anvil over my head really, on the other side of it, gave me the great benefit of being able to take risks in every other part of my life.
You started your very early professional career at William Morris, the talent agency in Hollywood, in the mailroom. What did you learn for life there?
Well, I went to the mailroom because it was the only way I could start in the thing that I was intrigued by, which was the entertainment business. And in the mailroom, you literally, it wasn't you were sorting mail, but you were a messenger boy, and you ran around delivering scripts and things to various people in studios in L.A. And I discovered first week I was there that there was this file room, as it was called. No longer, I think, are called such things as file rooms. Everything now is digitized. But this was a big physical space with 100 at least file cabinets. And in it was the history of the entertainment business. And so I decided that rather than do what the other mail boys were doing, running around, I would read the file room. And so for 3 years, secretively to a degree, I didn't do the mail boy stuff. I basically hung out reading the history of entertainment. And since William Morris had been in business for that time 70 years, literally since the 19th century, late 19th century, and it had the biographies of every single thing that happened in every phase of entertainment. And I read the entire file room. And that gave me the greatest foundation for being able to function. And I'm 20 years old, so.
Did you learn something about people that was helpful for your later career?
I was reading, I read the entire history of Elvis Presley, who was a client of William Morris from the moment he did his first little performance. But I learned, I don't know that I learned so much about people. I learned about structure. I learned the basic building blocks of what the entertainment world was in all of its disciplines. It's just, you couldn't conceive, I don't know, somebody else could do whatever, but I still can't conceive of a better way to at least get started. Nobody was going to pay it. I was 20 years old. No one was going to pay attention to me. So all I wanted to do was learn. It's like reading at Oxford.
Yeah, it was your university, absolutely. University for entertainment and life. Barry, the next step was ABC. And we spoke about reinvention at the beginning. Can you describe, how that happened, that you got the chance to invent a complete new form of film production and TV entertainment, basically?
Many things that comes out of, I guess, a little bit frustration. I was 23 or 24, I think. And my first real job at ABC was buying movies, already made movies, from the major studios. And I don't know if this is true in Europe, but in the U.S. in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, still today a bit, running theatrical movies that had been in theaters on television was a very popular thing. So I was buying this stuff, and I bought everything I could, and I realized they're not making enough movies to supply a television network, which has got a program 24/7. And I thought also the movies that were being made at this time, it was a fallow period for movie making. They weren't resonating as much in the broad culture. And so I thought, well, that popped into my head is, well, why don't we make our own? Seemed reasonable to me. And I started talking about it again people really didn't pay much attention to me then. But I started talking about it, and it evolved into saying, why don't we try and make not a 120-minute movie, but a 90-minute movie and have it every week. And everybody thought, well, that nobody's done that before. It's too expensive. It's too this, too that. But I struck a vein with actually the old chairman of ABC who had once been in the movie business, and he liked my idea. And because everyone else thought it would fail, I was the one who got to actually execute it. So with zero staff other than me, we began to put together a program of making 24 original movies for the next television season. So it was the greatest experience anyone could have to start, I think, a business or anything. Because if you start with if you start with just yourself in a new area, you then, as you are adding people, so I can do it yourself. In the end, we had 2,000 people working for us. But in the beginning, the people that you hire to do various functions, you have to understand the function first. So you are building up a business, and this was a studio inside a network. You were building up a business brick by brick, so you had to understand every brick. It's the greatest training for being a manager that I could ever imagine. And despite everybody thinking it would fail, from the first hour of the first day, it was this smash hit. And we ended up in the third year, I think, we were up to making 75 movies a year. It was quite extraordinary. Triple the output of any studio.
At ABC, you also met Charlie Bluedorn, a very kind of unique entrepreneur in personality, the owner of Paramount, who then desperately tried to convince you to become the CEO of Paramount, which you, after a long process, finally accepted. And then again, you reinvented Paramount, which was really not doing well. And I think the biggest hit that was the breakthrough for you was then Saturday Night Fever, a very controversial project at the beginning. Why was that a taboo-breaking decision that you made?
What, to make that particular movie?
Yeah.
Or
the Saturday Night Fever movie. I mean, from today's perspective, it sounds like an obvious hit, but it didn't at the beginning.
No, it was an article in a local magazine, something of a Saturday night, written by a guy named Nick Cohen, very good writer, young writer. Anyway, it was an interesting idea, and I thought, which is all that it ever is to me, is this a good idea? And so we wrote a script for it, and it was a great script. But people said, you're going to make a movie about a guy who likes to dance, comes from Queens and wants to move to New York, etc. I said, yeah, it's a good story. And then we cast John Travolta, who was he was in a comedy series on television, never been in a movie. And everybody said, well, that's crazy. So, and then we had a second-time director, and then we fired him, and first-time director. It was a mess of a production. And by the way, after we wrote the script, after we started shooting, was the first time that the Bee Gees came up as being, so it wasn't conceived backwards. It was just step by step. And, the music of the Bee Gees was the music of that. I mean, it was a sensation, the music of Saturday Night Fever. And it all, like it does on many movie projects, it all came together. And while everybody discounted it, from the first hour of the first day, there were lines around the block, and it was a smash movie, and it made John Travolta a true movie star.
Working with movie stars like John Travolta and many others, Barbara Streisand, and historic figures of the entertainment industry. What is your take on the life of Hollywood celebrities, which Sometimes it's glamorous and
Now,
sometimes it's
then, whenever,
particularly depressing and sad. Uh,
no, look, um, yes, there are, of course, those cases, but in the majority, and I really know this because I know I've lived it for a great many decades, the majority of people who have fame and celebrity is they are very satisfied and happy as hell for having it. And most live through it well within themselves and are not besieged or feel besieged or whatever. Mostly, it's a good thing. I mean, whatever I've got of it, and it's certainly not, I mean, I'm more well known here in the States, obviously. But the one thing I absolutely have noticed, and it may explain some of this and why I think the majority are quite happy about it. You walk down the street and people recognize you. They are happy to see you. Now, of course, there's someone who's not unhappy who's very unhappy to see you and thinks you're a rat, but that's a whole other thing. I'm saying that that the natural reaction of people to famous people is to smile and be happy that they've seen them. And that cannot make any relatively normal person feel anything but good.
I remember a conversation that I had with the then German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, and he told me, you know, the worst thing is if you're going to a restaurant and you want to have a dinner, and every other minute somebody comes and asks you for an autograph and wants to take a picture and is asking you silly questions. So it is horrible to be recognized everywhere. There's only one thing that is worse, not to be recognized.
Yeah, exactly true. And yes, you can complain about it and whatever, but oh my God, it's such a ratty complaint. You should, and, and most, there are definitely exceptions to this. Most people, when they're interrupted, have learned, and it's not a hard trick to learn, how to deal with it without it being upsetting to the people they're with or around them. They're pros at this. They know how to deal with people, and they deal with people generally, really nicely and well.
But nevertheless, not. I mean, sometimes fame comes also with a high level of insecurity, or we could even call it imposture syndrome. That people who are super famous think they are not good enough, and that sometimes leads to almost depressions. Is that also something that you sometimes felt yourself as a superstar, super executive leader of the movie industry, that you thought, I'm not good enough?
Well, I've never thought I was good enough. I mean, I absolutely will never. I was thinking about this the other day with somebody who's telling me about a friend of ours and why haven't they matured from their insecurity that is so apparent. They're still insecure. And I said, I, I mean, am I more polished about it? Yes, but I don't think you ever can fix an insecurity ID fix. I don't think it's doable. I think it's part of your nature. And okay, yeah, I have,
Could it be a precondition for excellence?
oh, in many cases, yes, but then as we know, there's the other side of it of people that I just think, oh my God, how did God create them? Who have natural confidence, natural ease, natural self-assurance, the purest kind. And we know them, you know them, I know them. There ain't all that many of them. But when you see it, it's almost like, gold dusted because they're the real thing. It's a bit. I mean, it's not exactly. I don't know if I would say it's abnormal, but for sure there are those people. But then for sure there are people more like me who had insecurity in whatever way it came, for whatever reasons, and a feeling that, you don't have enough self to qualify. And I think that's always there.
It's hard for people to imagine that somebody like you, who is always bold and direct and powerful, physical presence and physical power and energy level of
Yeah.
one of a kind, that you could have feelings of uncertainty, insecurity, not being good enough. Could it be that this kind of strength that you show is also
Overcompensating?
yeah,
Sure. I mean, by the way, it's of no conscious act of mine. It is not, I didn't make it up. I didn't say, I have to behave this way, or I have to do that, or I have to do whatever. It is in my nature. And I do think it does have to do with having one anvil over my head rather than many, if it was concentrated in one. And once I was able to thrush through that, it it uh, it 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 allowed me, I guess, uh, to I don't know. I think the forces uh, of how I act and how I feel, I know from so many of my friends uh, who are very successful. Many of them have the same interior doubt. And it is a propellant one way or the other. Either that or it's something that will submerge you under the water.
either your self-confidence is more developed than your self-criticism, then you are easily satisfied with yourself and you think you are the greatest, or your self-criticism is developed more,
One,
and then you always want to get better. Makes sense.
one great line from actually one of the founders of Coca-Cola, Robert Woodruff, who said, "I'm only interested in associating with people who are dissatisfied." Uh,
I
and
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
and it's for people who you work with, your own work, whatever, it's true. If you have a dissatisfied nature and you have some energy, what are you going to do with it? You're going to fix things.
If you think
Make them
you
better.
have achieved it, you are done. It's
You're
over.
going to make them better.
And one day you had a real asshole as a boss. That was at the end of Paramount when the owner died and the former chief of staff took over, and he was incompetent and he was a bad personality. And you decided to leave, and Rupert Murdoch made you a great offer, which then led to the invention of Fox Broadcasting. Why did Murdoch convince you? What was it?
Well. Actually, I can do this very quickly, but it wasn't that. It was, I decided I had to leave Paramount. I'd been there 10 years. We'd had extraordinary success. We'd led the movie business for 7 straight years. And I had this person that after the person who was my, very much in my life, Charlie Bluedorn, who brought me to Paramount, died. I knew I had to leave. I had no choice. I just wanted out. And through a circumstance of events, that the day I resolved is the day that I actually got this offer to run 20th Century Fox, which was a studio that had been run down. And so it wasn't anybody convincing me, so to speak. I was there for the taking. And then, as serendipity, my lodestar, happened a month or two later, I revived this idea of starting a 4th television network. There were only 3 television networks at the time in the U.S., and of starting a 4th one. And that began the thing of establishing Fox Broadcasting, which everybody absolutely thought would never succeed. And 5 years later, it was the #1 network in the U.S. So it was quite a saga.
Did you convince Rupert to establish that, or did he
No,
basically
no,
already hire
no,
you for
no,
that job?
no, no. It was a weird confluence of events. I had at Paramount thought that that in the United States that we needed an alternative to these three networks. They all kind of lockstep were kind of programmed the same. But at the time, I couldn't get the people at the parent company to put up the money for it. And the uh, second, maybe second month I was at Fox, um, uh, I this is too long to bore it with, but the owner of some television stations in the U.S. came to my office. Rupert had been in Australia on his way to New York and stopped off, and I invited him to this meeting. It turned out the guy would sell the stations, and I said, "Oh, let's buy those stations." And I explained that I'd always wanted to do this fourth network, and Murdoch, the greatest entrepreneur that I've ever known, and the greatest risk taker, said, "Great, let's bet the company, do it."
In a minute, basically, without hesitation, spontaneous decision.
Without a PowerPoint presentation, without any business analysis. I wrote the business plan of Fox on a piece of scratch paper. And we just set about doing it. And it was great. Again, I so love, well, I've always liked being discounted, but I so love the idea of if you have a good idea, the fact that everybody else around you says it's going to fail is a great ability. Why? Because they leave you alone.
Rupert Murdoch, for some people, considered as a kind of arch-evil, the sinister Darth Vader of a conservative media conspiracy, seems to have a certain form of charm. Could you describe
Oh my
his
God.
charm and his
Rupert,
secret?
Rupert is, listen, I, I left Fox before Rupert started Fox News, uh, which is a controversial, and I think deservedly so. I think it has many negative aspects, uh, and I'm certainly the opposite of an arch conservative or arch anything. I hope, uh, but Murdoch, the 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 dark evil of Murdoch because of the conservative and because of the role he played in politics and certainly Australia, Britain, and now in the U.S. However, he's the greatest. Honestly, he is the greatest entrepreneur, or whatever you want to call it, in media. You can't. This is somebody with a little tiny newspaper in Adelaide, built in Australia, the biggest publishing business in Australia. Went to Britain, did the same thing, came to the United States at three different continents. Is that right? Yes. Did the same incredible thing by and by the way, when Rupert wants something, he's the most
That's it.
charming, interesting, fun person to be. He's just, I mean, if you, as I said, if you have to work for somebody, work for Rupert. Now, he will, by the way, at some point throw you out, but when you've served his purpose. But
On top of that, I've just met him a couple of weeks ago in his mid-90s. He's in perfect mental shape, so
no,
crisp and sharp,
isn't it
unbelievable.
shocking?
He's
Yes.
outsmarting most of the 30 years old. But at one point, there was also a conflict between you and Rupert, basically driven by the fact that you discovered that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You wanted to be an
Yep.
owner. Could you describe that desire? Why
Yes,
wasn't it enough to be the greatest CEO of the media
because
industry?
look, I'd run. I'd had this great career when I was in my early 20s at ABC, and then I ran Paramount, and then I ran Fox, and all these things. And Fox, not only network was successful, we were very successful at making movies. And yet, I think all good executives believe that it's their company, and uh, they make this. It is an illusion that it belongs to them. And I think if you're a good executive, that is what you do. And it's not a manufactured thing. It's an emotional thing. It's a mother church thing. It's you belong to something and you think it's yours. Well, in my head, after this time at Fox, I thought, you know what? It isn't mine. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But I thought it became a kind of word bubble in my head. It's either you are or you are not able to be independent of being a corporatist, of living in a corporate life. And that I didn't want to leave Fox. Everything was great. But that gnawed at me. And I went to Rupert and I said, look, I want to be a partner. I want to be, yeah, I act like I operate this. I make my own decisions, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to, and he did me the great good fortune of saying, this is a family company. You're not a member of the family. And
brutal but honest.
Yeah. And I mean, it was not what I wanted to hear, but I thought, well, now I've been told. So now the question is, you are or you're not capable of being. And that I could not, in the end, answer that I was not. And so that forced me out. And I didn't want to go. It was like I had no choice. And so I set off on my own.
And then you did the most surprising thing, which nobody understood, that you got interested and hooked by a shopping channel, QVC, which led to an epiphany about the possibilities of screens. Could you describe that epiphany?
I mean, yeah, sure. Sorry, quickly. I just want to babble on with stuff. But for me, screens were used to tell stories. They were passive. They were narrative things. And I went to this home shopping channel and I saw screens being used interactively, put products up. At that time, a kind of primitive convergence of phones and computers and television sets. And they were interactive. And I thought, wow, screens can be used for something other than just telling stories. They could be interactive with the consumer. And that just fascinated me. This is 92, 3 years before the internet, before real interactivity began. But I got this primitive little taste of it, and I couldn't get it out of my head. So instead of doing the thing everyone expected me to do, which is to go be a producer, Hollywood, whatever, I went to the wilds of Pennsylvania, a state in America, in a rural place where this television thing, and I went there because I was fascinated about screens. And so when the internet came along 3 years later, there I was prepped.
And then you created
then we
IAC.
did a lot of stuff. Yeah, we did a lot of things.
Then you created this conglomerate of independent internet companies from Expedia to Ticketmaster and created that incredible own company. Now finally being the owner, being the entrepreneur. What changed for you? What was different than being the CEO?
Oh, everything. Everything changes when you're away from the mothership, and particularly in an area. This was the beginning of the revolution of digital, and it's new fertile ground. Your independence, which is both frightening and energizing, and your ability to see things as they begin and just react to the day with nothing else to guide you. You don't have a mothership. You just have your own little smarts or not smarts to get you to the next step, is a completely different experience than, quote, working.
How important was it for you to get rich?
Not at all. Look, I was very lucky. I grew up in circumstances where money was not an issue for my family. And also I because I think it's because, well, I don't know why it's because, but whatever, I've never made a single decision in my life about money. It's never motivated me. It's lovely to have. I'm very happy that we have a lot of resources, our family, and we enjoy them. But uh, it's just my unique circumstances. It never mattered to me, and and I'm the luckier for it because it's a byproduct. Look, I always think in these cases, it is well, that's not true. For me, it was a byproduct. For most people, it is the product. And, uh, and, and I think many of those people who once they've got it, it is not very fulfilling.
So if it's not the money, is it freedom? I mean, a kind of more independence that comes with
Of course it
ownership?
is. Of course it is. Yes. I mean, it's symbolic. Uh, it means nobody has their thumb on your neck in any way. It means, yes, of course, look, having resources gives you optionality. Uh, if you don't have resources, then you don't got much optionality. You've got to meet the mortgage. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You've got to make compromises. If you're fortunate enough to have resources, you just have an endless optionality. And if you're of a mind to, you can turn that to anything in your interest. You can turn it to philanthropy. You can turn it to anything you like, or you can do what, unfortunately, I think a lot of people do is just conserve it, which seems to me very wasteful.
Did your leadership style change? Did you get more kind of, I don't know, subjective and spontaneous because it's basically your money, it's your decision?
No, I don't think so.
How would you describe your leadership style? I mean,
My leadership style, I hate this thing of, I hate the word leader. It just sounds so pretentious to me. I recognize its ground definition clearly. It just, I think people kind of overuse it, whatever. I think, it's like writing a manifesto of what culture you want to imbue in your enterprise. A lot of companies do that. And I really think your leadership is simply as pure an expression of yourself as you can be in what you are doing. And for me, because I am very direct, I love creative conflict. I like lots of argument, and those things that I are me. That is, again, that is without again putting this big pretentious leadership thing. That is it's my life force. And
but you have created, Barry, a whole generation of successful CEOs. Among them, Dara, the CEO of Uber. He used to be the CEO of Expedia, working for you.
yeah,
The
I
so-called
have a lot
Diller
of
boys. They are called the Diller boys. So it's a
I
whole
well,
generation, and it seems to be also a particular style of leadership. Then, what did they learn from you? What are you teaching them?
I
Consensus is the opposite of leadership, said Maggie Thatcher.
yeah, no, I don't like consensus, and I don't like consistency either.
Okay.
Uh, and so it is. Yes, I mean, look, I believe I think hiring at senior positions outside of your company means you're a failure. Uh, it's the highest risk that you can do is to hire outside for senior positions based upon interviews or whatever process anyone wants to go through. The best process, at least for me and whatever, is bring people in to your organization at the earliest stage, at the youngest stage, drop them in the water before they've got necessarily experience, before they like are so to speak guaranteed by their history, is drop them into areas that they have no experience in and see who survives, who can paddle above the water. And
That's a fascinating combination of freedom and Darwinism. So you provide them ultimate freedom, but if they don't run fast enough, they're gone.
but yes, of course, it's
Yeah,
self-determinative,
yeah.
but it's great if you can only do that at the earliest stages of someone's career. You cannot, if you're hiring a senior vice president or a president of a division or whatever, and they've got experience in history and all of that, they ain't going to learn nothing from your environment. They impose theirs. And if you already have a culture in your company, uh, it's it is corrosive to that. It doesn't really work as well. It's best let people germinate inside the organism and rise up. And if you can do that consistently, and I've certainly sometimes succeeded and sometimes failed at that, if you do that consistently, you'll have a great enterprise.
You said that money is not the motivator. Nevertheless, you are enjoying the
Oh yeah.
opportunities that wealth provides. One example is your sailing boat, EOS. I think it is
Yes.
one of the, if not the biggest private sailing boat in the world. Um, what's the story? What's the secret behind that passion
The
for
secret
boat, for
behind it
sailing?
is for whatever reasons, again, I, if I'm not near the water, it's not a good thing. I gotta somehow, like, right up my little window here, I can see the East River in New York City. I can see water. I've always liked being on water, and I've always liked boats. And I got the opportunity, this is now 20 years ago, to build my own boat, having bought lots of boats before. And so I spent 6 years designing the life out of it, or the life into it. And it's like anything, it's a creation, but it is, I mean, I just spent almost 2 months on it. It, 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 how lucky do you get that you have like a great home, uh, and it's totally comfortable, and the crew is all been involved with you for a long time, and it moves, and you can
Like you.
take it anywhere in the world. I mean, how lucky do you get to do that?
Barry, 1 year ago, I arrived in Genoa in Italy at the port, and I was walking around, and suddenly I discovered a boat that was not only particularly big, it was particularly beautiful. And
It's a pretty thing.
uh, I had no clue which boat it was. And then I looked at the front of the boat, and
Ah,
there was a figurehead. And the figurehead reminded me of a person that I know. And I thought, could that be Diane? Could that be Diane von Fürstenberg, the wife of Barry Diller? So yeah, I think it was her. So could it be the boat? I checked it, I Googled it, and it was your boat. What a wonderful romantic gesture to put the love of your life as the figurehead on the front of your boat.
yeah, it is a very pretty thing, but and Dion and I, we like having our friends on it, and certainly our family and whatever. But the best times are when it's just her and me alone on this fantastic boat, traveling and adventuring in places that people don't usually go.
I mean, just for people who are listening to us, this is not a boat for two. It's a huge boat.
It's a
It's almost, I don't know.
it's a
Uh,
big yes, it is, yes, it is true. It is big, but there are lots of big boats. This boat, though, because I think it's a sailboat and because it's designed for intimacy, it's great with a lot of people on it, but it's great with just, not only is it great with Dion and me, I will also say, and Dion likes this too, it's great when she's on it alone without me, and I'm on it alone without anyone. It's also great. It's a luxury. It's the only, to me, I mean, it's justifiable, I guess is a hard word to use for this, but it, people don't, who have a lot, resources, means, uh, people do not live today as they lived 100 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever. Uh, and yet on a boat, you can, saying this is so bimbo-y, but on a boat, you can live, uh, with this kind of ultimate luxury of this home that moves, and it doesn't feel excessive.
Barry, let's speak about your love for Diane. Could you just describe how you met and how you fell in love? I mean, that was in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was not written. It was not to be expected.
It
I
was
think, at least for yourself, to fall in love with a woman. What happened?
it was the French phrase coup de foudre. It was I don't know, in some ways an explosion in a way. It was completely unexpected, unplanned, unmotivated, whatever. But we met, and within an hour, uh, uh, it was not within an hour, oh my God, this is the love of your life or whatever. But there was a complicity that was inexplicable. Uh, and uh, and then just it 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 so fast became the reality of our lives. And it was I mean, it was, as I say, it was in a way an explosion in all ways. I mean, every positive manifestation of the word explosion. And it lasted its first phase. It lasted for 7 or 8 years, and then we broke apart, and we were apart for about 10 years. And then we came back together, and then 25 years ago, we got married. And Diane said to me actually last week, she said, do you realize that in 1 month is the 50th anniversary of our first being together?
And I mean, it is way more than just a kind of intellectual friendship. It is really a passionate
From the first
love
hour,
from the
I've
first
used that
hour.
word, from the first moment. Yeah.
Is it because you're so similar, or is it rather because you're so complementary, so
Matthias,
different that like
it's
yin and yang?
there's no way. I can't.
You can't describe it.
There's no way I could do it. I don't. It is. We have some similarities. We have enormous contrast. She was raised in Europe, uh, and she's the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, uh, and the, all of our experiences. She was married to uh, a it's a German or Austrian prince, the Fürstenberg family. I think it's both, is it? You may know
Yeah,
better
it's
than me.
complicated with the noble families.
Uh, a family that had been noble for, I think, 800 years or something. Uh, our experiences are vastly different. And yet, there's a complicity that is complete.
In the book, you're sharing some passages from the letters she wrote to you, and it really seems that she understands you better than anybody else. I mean, there's magic that she
Probably
knows.
so. Probably so. Um, she's many aspects of a classic Earth mother. She's that way with her children, uh, and with her friends. Her capacity is for kindness and for empathy, and also someone who abhors, I wouldn't even call it small talk, but unless you're having an intimate conversation with her, you're having no conversation with her.
Would you say that kind of mental um, togetherness and a fascination for the intellectual side of a person can lead to the feeling to be physically attracted?
Not on your life. At least I don't think so. No.
So would
Listen.
you say,
It's
because
my. It's
Diane
my.
is
It.
and
No, no, no,
always was a
Matthias.
beauty, would you say that it is because you felt physically attracted by her immediately at the beginning?
Yes.
Interesting. Hmm.
Oh, yes. Before I didn't know.
But she wasn't is the only woman that you ever found attractive in this
Not
full
the
sense?
only. No, that's not completely accurate. But listen, you now get into these very. I don't find them very sensitive, but I know other people do,
Mm,
of sexuality and bisexuality.
mhm.
And on the spectrum of things, uh, I think that there is more of a spectrum than is generally recognized, though absolute heterosexuality or homosexuality, let's say over here, but this spectrum, I think, has a lot more fluidity, not for everybody, but for many people. It's not unnatural or
Would you
absolute.
say that every man has a female element and
Uh,
every female has
I
a
don't know about
male
every,
element?
as I say,
So
I think there are some, and now we know this, Matthias, there are some people, certainly men and women, who are just absolutely heterosexual, absolutely homosexual or lesbian. I mean, I don't know the definition of the word. And that's true for sure. And then there's an awful lot of other people who are somewhere in there, but not absolute. And I think that uh, I, I can only speak for myself, and I've never analyzed myself to know where am I on that. I just know that uh, I've had relationships with men, and my relationship with Diane is definitely unique, but seems natural to me.
and it's interesting when you separated for uh, a couple of years, you didn't separate because she was annoyed because you were together with other men. It was the other way around.
No, no,
You
no,
were
no.
jealous because she had an affair with a famous other man.
This is true. Yes, I acted. I don't. I don't really think I don't. I've always thought that I have very little jealousy in me, because I only care what my relationship is and if I'm confident and comfortable in that. Uh, but this was one where the person, and I've talked about this, was Richard Gere, actor, uh, was making a movie for us. And I thought, I don't know, making a movie for me and having an affair with with the person I'm living with was a boat too far.
You mentioned that Diane was the daughter of Holocaust survivors. You are Jewish yourself, but you never really spoke publicly a lot about your Jewishness. How much does it mean for you and Diane?
It doesn't. I grew up in a family that was so irreligious. Though my on my mother's side they had no religion, but on my father's side he grew up in a family of, I think, 13, where it was like a very orthodox family, and so it was. I think he rejected religion as soon as he got out of that environment. So I never had it growing up, and I uh, and and I just don't have it as a thing of history or of, quote, faith. I do have it in terms of heritage, and I hope that I would never dishonor that.
A friend of mine who died a couple of years ago, a British publisher, George Weidenfeld, once said he was, I mean, a big Zionist and
Oh yes,
a strong supporter of the Jewish community in England and elsewhere. But he said, I was never a religious Jew. I never felt uh, that feeling of religious togetherness, but nevertheless, there was a tribal feeling of belonging.
of
Is
course.
that something applicable to you?
Yes, I would say in that tribal sense, it's true. Uh, and and as I say, I right now it's very hard, at least for me, and we don't want to go there, about Gaza and Palestine and the conflicts in this current Israeli government, etc. It's very hard because I have a tribal, without question, tribal and a and forget even tribal, just the existence of Israel. What happened? How did it? How did it come into being? Is a story of courage and all sorts of things. And it's really hard for me, as much as I believe in that, uh, to balance that in a way. It's like almost impossible to balance with uh, what what I think is an inhuman treatment of humans.
We're experiencing globally a new rise of anti-Semitism. What happens in American universities, what happens on streets in Berlin and elsewhere in the world, is deeply disturbing. And it seems to almost be a generational phenomenon. If you
Yes,
talk to young Americans, there is an almost kind of politically correct attitude to express anti-Semitism in pure and brutal forms. Do you think that's really something that is fundamentally changing, or is it just a wave that goes away?
I'm not the greatest one to ask about this, but I do think that this is anti-Semitism has been true forever, and it goes in waves. Uh, and right now, I think I don't know about the cresting of any wave, but I do think this anti-Semitism is not in its pure form. It is a reflection of the plight of Palestinians, and I think that's the energy that propels it. But in history, there is and always has been a native uh, anti-Semitic tendency that gets ignited by events.
But anti-Semitism was very aggressive and brutal as a phenomenon on the very right of the political spectrum of society. And
Yes,
today
you're
it
right,
seems to
and
be the
now
opposite. It's on the
it's
very left. It almost sometimes seems to be
that's right.
part of the woke movement that comes
It
across
is.
almost like a Trojan
It is
horse of
absolutely
anti-Semitism.
parallel to woke. It is, I'm as anti woke on the left as I'm anti woke on the right, but the right woke is versus the left woke. But this is absolutely in alignment with it, and it does come out of and it is a plight of the Palestinian people, and and that has drawn for the first time what you would think of as the left actually now acting out with anti-Semitism, which was always the right of the fascist.
Barry, as you said at the beginning, that you sometimes regret that you didn't speak up about homosexuality earlier, and perhaps also in order to encourage other people, could you, at the age of 83, perhaps start to discover the fight against anti-Semitism as an important purpose for the years to come for you, also for your non-commercial activities?
We do, our foundation does do some support, uh, uh, but actually, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Why not?
I just haven't been thoughtful about it in that regard. I haven't thought I have a role to play. I don't think I would. I don't think, although, I've never actually thought of it as something for me to participate in. It seems like a bigger issue than anything that I or resources that I have could add to that. My uh my wife has a different history, and uh, has been very, very engaged for decades in issues that relate to that.
At the end of your book, you are reflecting a little bit about the purpose of life, what lasts once you are gone. Of course, you have your philanthropic projects, the High Line that everybody who visits New York or lives in New York loves, and
Yeah.
now, more importantly, the beautiful island that you have created. Those are things that are going to last. But is it really, in a way, only that physical legacy that you want to leave, or what could be the legacy that goes beyond it that you would like to?
I don't much think of legacy except in the memories of your family and generations to come. I think that uh, the physical things we've built, we chose not to name them with our family name, with my name or our formal foundation, which is both Diane's and my name. So I don't really think in those terms. I don't. I wouldn't do anything in furtherance of that. So again, I think it is I think your legacy is the memories of those you've touched.
And it seems also to be a legacy that you're leaving, that it's always about the next thing. So what is the next thing for you? Is it an AI project that you have in mind that you want to shape?
I have, like right now, there are a few things. I mean, there's nothing worthy of, they're not formed enough yet, but I am still engaged in all sorts of things. And some of them have greater purpose than just me or whatever. Some of them are just things that I am attracted to and want to perpetuate. And I love public art and I love public spaces. And so anything that tickles that gets me immediately engaged. And I like building things. I mean, you just leave me alone and I'll build a castle. And I don't mean that in the literal sense. I mean a little sand castle to a building I'm sitting in, which is the work of a great architect named Frank Gehry. And that's what I like doing. And it'll have whatever relevance it has down the line. I'm always amazed. The thing that impresses me the most is when I come upon something 100 years, 200 years, 50 years, whatever, but was done a while ago. And I see it and I think it's usually the will of a single person that gets something built. And I just marvel that it's still serving a public purpose.
But it's interesting that you're now mentioning art and architecture. I truly think that probably the only two things that really last beyond our lifespan is either art or love.
I think, yes, this is definitely true. And that's why I say your legacy is certainly with me, it's my children, grandchildren, I think pretty soon to be great grandchildren, and the descendants. Uh, and that is love. And, yeah, the other part of it is physical. It is those things that you've been able to, if you're lucky enough, you've been able to create that have continuing relevance. I mean, I look out down just the way and I see the Statue of Liberty given to the United States by France. And it exists. And it is, we all know it, the icon of America. And it took the will of people, actually very few people at the time, that actually got that transported miraculously from France to here, built on this tiny little island. And I'm sure there's so everywhere in Europe, my God, you can't walk a block without seeing something that was created by somebody's will that stands the test of time. That's marvelous.
Barry, thank you so much for your time.
Nice to be with you.